Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is April 14th, 2022. Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Kent.
Here.
Councilor Giannettino.
Here.
Councilor Cuddy.
Here.
Councilor Locastro.
Here.
Mayor Quill.
Here. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We remain standing for a moment of silent prayer reflection. And I ask you this evening to keep in your thoughts and prayers retired Assistant Fire Chief Ralph Legret, who passed away earlier this week. Thank you. Please be seated. Public announcements, Mr. Clerk?
Thanks, Mayor. We do have a couple of announcements this evening. The first is that the next meeting of the Nuisance Abatement Committee for the City of Auburn will be held on April 20th, 2022 at 9 a.m. That meeting will be held here in Council Chambers at Memorial City Hall, 24 South Street. And then on the screens this evening for the council, I have the announcement about Earth Day event, which is happening a week from Saturday. That's Saturday, April 23rd, 2022, 10 a.m. through noon. The Auburn Beautification Commission is coordinating the volunteer cleanup event down on the Wasco River, trying to tidy up the areas between Mill Street Dam and down to Market Street Park. Volunteers are encouraged to meet at 10 a.m. in the Mill Street Dam area, and please feel free to bring your own tools, work gloves, things like that. And that's happening in about 10 days from now. So that's all I have this evening, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Ceremony presentation, public to be heard.
At this point in time, we will open the public to be heard portion of the council meeting. Residents are asked to state their name and address for the record. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes or less, and please observe rules of courtesy, common courtesy and decorum.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone desiring to be heard? No one? Take your time, we'll get everybody, one at a time. No one? Very well, we will have a second public to be heard near the end of the meeting. Thank you. Approval of meeting minutes from April 7th. That would be on next week's agenda. Thank you. Mr. Diger, City Manager report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things real quick. Late last week, we received our annual notification from the New York State Comptroller related to our fiscal stress score. And this year, the City of Auburn's fiscal stress, easy for you to say, fiscal stress score came in as a no designation, as it has been over the last several years. Our actual score was a 1.7 as compared to 2 consecutive prior years of 11.3, so that's a good sign. They also score us on what they refer to as environmental stress or outside stresses on our operations, and again, that's no designation this year, similar to last year, which was an improvement over 2019. So that score last year was 20, and this year it's down to 13.3. So we're in pretty good shape relative to that. Normally in the fall, we have Mike Talbot come in and talk about snow plows and plow routes and stuff like that. And I think we've got a new annual spring discussion, and that's I'm going to turn it over to the police chief briefly for dirt bikes and ATVs on our streets, because that seems to have already started in the community. So, Chief.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Council. Yeah, it's this time of year that we start getting complaints of ATVs, four-wheelers, scooters. Since August of 2020, New York State has allowed electric bikes on the roadways. So we want to get out to everybody that with that, these electric bike, there come some rules and regulations that go along them, which follow the vehicle and traffic laws. So some of these devices are able to be on highways, nothing posted over 30 miles an hour. You must follow the rules of the road, such as stopping at stop signs, stop lights, things of that nature. You cannot operate these devices on sidewalks, except authorized by local ordinances. So the council has an opportunity to set certain ordinances that go along with these electric bikes. One of the other big things that we deal with, these bikes can't be registered, and the same with ATVs. Auburn does not have any streets in the city that allow ATV riders. They can't be registered, so therefore they can't be driven on the roadways. Some of the other issues that we talk about are the mini bikes. They're the smaller motorcycles. All these items I'm about to mention cannot be registered. They cannot be ridden on the sidewalks or roadways of the city of Auburn. The mini bikes, as I mentioned, off-road motorcycles, which are dirt bikes, go-karts, golf carts, and such. So this time of year, we've already received this week 3 complaints on ATVs and motorcycles on the roadways. The officers are doing their due diligence, getting out and doing the best they can to curtail this. Any questions regarding the electric bikes? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. That's all I have right at the moment, Mayor.
Very good.
Mayor, if I may real quick, on the topic of the fiscal stress score, I just want to comment that, while we're in the beginning phases of the budget, I think that news and that report, and I actually read through it, and I read what the criterias were. I think it really underscores the good work that has gone on in this building to get our finances in order. Do we face struggles and challenges? We do, just like every other community. But the fact that there was not only no designation, but the fact that that number had dropped significantly, almost to 0 in both cases, really is an indication that our staff is doing a very good job throughout the entire organization. So I just wanted to go on record as saying that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, councilors, on the reports or yourself, whatever? Very well. Bond ordinance number 1. This is the first reading, am I correct?
Yes.
Bond ordinance number 1 of 2022, authorizing the issuance of $2,345,000 in serial bonds to finance the costs of various capital projects. Once again, it's first reading only, be on for vote next.
Sure, yep, so I'll just give it a quick first reading. Bond ordinance number 1 of 2022, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Auburn that the City of Auburn, Q County, is hereby authorized to undertake the various capital projects described below at an aggregated estimate maximum cost of $2,345,000. The estimated maximum cost of each project as follows. A, fleet vehicles for public works and codes departments. The purchase of equipment and vehicles to be used for constructing, reconstructing, repairing, or maintaining city improvements, the cost of which is $30,000 or more, including 2 10-wheel dump trucks, 3 fleet vehicles having a seating capacity of less than 10 persons, a solid waste refuse packer at an estimated maximum cost not to exceed $775,000, and to issue the aggregate $775,000 in serial bonds pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. B, equipment for municipal utilities department, the purchase of equipment for the water and sewer department of the city, the cost of which is $30,000 or more, including 1 backhoe and 1 excavator at an estimated maximum cost not to exceed $370,000, and to issue the aggregate $370,000 in serial bonds pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. C, equipment for fire department turnout gear, the purchase of equipment to be used for personal protective equipment, the cost of which is $30,000 or more for the city fire department at an estimated maximum cost not to exceed $240,000, and to issue an aggregate $240,000 in serial bonds pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. D, 2022-2023 road improvement program, the reconstruction and resurfacing of various city streets and roads, including sidewalks, curbs, gutters, drainage, landscaping, fencing, grading, or improving the rights of way with a pavement which will be more durable construction than pavement of sand and gravel, water-bound macadam, or penetration process with a single surface treatment at an estimated maximum cost not to exceed $800,000, and to issue the aggregate $800,000 in serial bonds. E, city buildings and grounds improvements, the renovation or reconstruction of the scale house located at the Auburn landfill, whether or not including grading or improvement of the site, original furnishings, equipment, machinery, or apparatus required for the purposes of which such building is to be used at an estimated maximum cost not to exceed $160,000, and to issue the aggregate $160,000 in serial bonds. It is hereby determined that the maximum estimated cost of the aforesaid specific objects or purposes is $2,345,000. Said amount is hereby appropriated therefore, and the plan for the financing thereof shall consist of the issuance of $2,345,000 in serial bonds of the city. Section 3, it is hereby determined that the period of probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific objects or purposes to Section 11A of the local finance law are as follows. The Department of Public Works, 2 dump trucks, 15 years. The Department of Public Works refuse packer, 15 years. Staff vehicles, 3 years. 2022-2023 road improvement program, 15 years. And buildings and grounds improvements, 25 years. And the council hereby determines that the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the regulations thereunder have previously been satisfied, and the ordinance will take effect immediately once it's adopted, and this will be on back before you, Mayor, next week.
Very good, thank you. Let's see. Council Resolution number 39 of 2022, supporting the Schweinfurth Art Center with its application for a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Economic Development Initiative grant. We have a sponsor, Councilor Giannettino, second by Councilor Cuddy.
Council Resolution 39 of 2022, whereas the Schweinfurth Art Center, located at 205 Genesee Street in Auburn, is a nonprofit gallery and multi-arts facility that offers a wide array of exhibits, programs, art classes, and workshops for children, teens, and adults in our community. Whereas the Art Center contributes significantly to our community's quality of life and is a prominent tourist attraction within the Central and Finger Lakes region of our state. And whereas the Art Center is a participating member of the city's Historic and Cultural Sites Commission. And whereas together with the Cougar Museum of History and Art, the Schweinfurth Art Center is investing in the largest awarded project of the City of Auburn's Downtown Revitalization Initiative Grant Program, the $3.75 million project known as the West End Arts Campus, that received a DRI grant award of $1.9 million towards the project. And whereas the city's 5-year consolidated plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program includes the census tracts that are identified by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development as eligible for CDBG investment, based on the fact that more than 51% of residents in these census tracts are low or moderate income, and Census Tract 421, where both the Schweinfurth Art Center and the Cougar Museum are located, is included on this list and is also the qualified census tract for investment for the city's American Rescue Plan Act funding. And whereas the city has further supported the West End Arts Campus project with allocations of $250,000 each to the Schweinfurth Art Center and Cougar Museum to support their respective portions of the project. And whereas this spring, Congressman John Katko has made available community project funding request opportunities for fiscal year 2023, and the Schweinfurth Art Center will be applying for a Department of Housing and Urban Development Economic Development Initiative grant of $350,000 for their part of the West End Arts Campus project. And whereas the Schweinfurth Art Center's investment in the West End Arts Campus will bring revitalization to the city's western gateway to downtown, as well as the neighborhood located in Census Tract 421, which has been identified as the qualified census tract for investment of the city's American Rescue Plan Act funding, making this project a high priority for our city. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council that one, the council strongly supports the Schweinfurth Art Center with its community project funding request for fiscal year 2023 to Congressman John Katko for a Department of Housing and Urban Development Economic Development Initiative grant of $350,000 for their part of the West End Arts Campus project, and two, the city clerk shall forward a certified copy of the resolution to the Schweinfurth Art Center to include the resolution with its grant application. Thanks, Mayor.
Council, with your permission, over the last few weeks, we received many requests from different organizations for letters of support, and we, at this time, we declined it, but we have not declined, we're not declining this one. I would ask Mr. Mason if he'd just take a few minutes and explain what the difference is. We're not picking one over another, but there are certain criteria that they and we need to follow. Good take, so.
Sure, Mayor, and in particular to some of these grant requests that are made available now just in the last couple of years by our congressmen and federal officials. Sometimes they require letters of support, sometimes they require resolutions of support from the local municipality. So in the case of the Schweinfurth Art Center, the application of the specific program that they're looking for requires a resolution of support from the local council. We've also received in the last couple of weeks letter of support requests from organizations that are working on other projects in the city that also at the moment go in front of our city planning board or sometimes in front of our industrial development authority. And the kind of the policy that we use is that the council does not make letters of support or resolutions of support for projects oftentimes that have to go in front of other city boards first. So it's in the particular, in the case of the Auburn Industrial Development Authority, there's two members of this council that sit on the Industrial Development Authority and have to make independent decisions on behalf of the city for that board. So it's really not good practice for the council to kind of step in front of that process. So that's why we are here tonight in support of the Schweinfurth. They really are in the process that doesn't intersect any other city boards yet with this specific grant program. So
Personally, I just don't want anyone to think we don't support growth in our community and helping anyone. But we have a procedure we have to follow because we could be considered as tipping the scales if we were to go ahead or take it out of this thing. So, and I know many of you received the same request and why we're doing it. So, Councilor, did you have a question?
No.
Thank you. So we have a sponsor. Discussion. Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. And piggybacking on the conversation or the discussion that you just had and the clerk just had, this is a project that is much farther along. It was supported in the DRI with a tremendous amount of community input. I think it was one of the when we had the public meetings and there was the input and the tallying, that was one of the strongest supported projects by the public. On top of that, it has been included in our ARPA funding. Tonight, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, we have with us Donna Lamb from the Schweinfurth. Are you in a position to come up and give the public kind of an update on where this whole project is?
Donna Lamb from the Schweinfurth. We are in the design phase. We hired an architect last November. So they're finishing up the pre-schematic designs right now and moving into schematic design. So we hope to have construction documents ready by fall to put the project out to bid. And so we're looking at construction starting sometime in 2023. So,
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you. All set, Councilor. Anyone else any discussion on that? So, call the roll, please.
Councilor Kent,
Yes.
Councilor Giannettino,
Aye.
Councilor Cuddy,
Yes.
Councilor Locastro,
Yes.
and Mayor Quill.
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you. Staff under presentations. First is finance. Mr. Dyger, would you care to explain who is here this evening?
Sure, so
As
we
best you
have,
can.
I've got our city treasurer is here to do that in the absence of our comptroller, who will be here this evening, so.
All right, this is going to be short, but we'll go over it. All right, under the finance department, we have 5 different departments. Briefly go through them each. We have the treasurer's office, which is my department. We're responsible for collecting all the revenue for the city, and I'm also responsible for all the excess cash reserves. And then we have the comptroller's office, which is basically your accounting office that pays all the bills, makes all the purchases, processes payroll, and overall budget maintenance. The assessor's office, pretty self-explanatory, especially with the revale this year. I'm sure everyone's heard about that. And they're also responsible for granting application for city properties. Our central service is our IT department and also citywide expenditures, basically paper products, office supplies and stuff everybody uses. Human resources, they take care of everyone that's coming on a city payroll or leaving the city for a variety of reasons, and also workers' comp. Next, we have a overall of our budget. Most all the budgets in the department are going down, as you can see on the right column. Basically, the top underneath the departments is basically your salary and all your fringe benefits, and then the operating budgets, like I said, your office supplies and stuff of that nature, services and stuff like that. And basically, all this, the decrease is due to the fact that a lot of people within the department promoted up to a new position, and then we filled it with someone at a big given salary, so, which is what you want to do, and that's basically what has happened, as you can see by that. And that's basically, I said I'll keep it quick. That's about it, unless someone has any questions.
You get the award for
Fast enough, John.
best presentation. Thank you.
This last-minute sub, I had to do it quickly.
I just thought I heard the fire chief say that he could do yours. He's done.
All
All
set?
set?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a nice Easter.
Thank you. Chief Fritz from the fire department. If you can beat Mr. Gothier, chief, you get a big raise.
I'll do my best.
All right, where do I get out of here? I'm gonna lose just on setup alone. There we go.
Chief, if you go up to the top and you, under view and then go to full screen mode.
There you go. All right, so good evening, Mayor and councilors. Tonight I will present to you the 2023 budget for the fire department. This will follow the same format as in recent years, just to keep it consistent and simple. So this is our mission statement. I'm not going to read it out loud, but basically what it says is the department members are going to provide service to the citizens of the community in a professional manner, and we're going to do pretty much anything they call us to do. That's always been the fire department's motto. If you don't know who to call the fire department. We will come up, show up, and if we don't know how to fix it, we'll find somebody who can. So this is the services the department offers the community. Obviously, fire suppression. We respond to motor vehicle accidents, provide emergency medical care and vehicle extrication. We have a hazardous materials response team within the department, highly trained members that handle hazardous materials incidents We have tech rescue response teams. We have several disciplines that we cover: confined space, swift water, ice rescue, trench rescue, structural collapse. So we have members specially trained for all those disciplines. We provide emergency medical response. So the fire department responds as a first response agency to emergency medical calls and starts delivering care to those individuals until such time as our partner department ambulance shows up and takes over care. The fire department provides fire inspection programs to local businesses, churches, healthcare facilities, foster homes, whereby the Fire Investigation Bureau goes in and ensures that those establishments are safe for the public and the employees that work there. We have 2 fire prevention programs. We have a program whereby we have certified life safety instructors that go out and teach fire safety to our citizens, whether they be preschoolers or whether they be senior citizens at one of our local high-rises. We also have a J-Fire program, that stands for Juvenile Fire Prevention Team. That team is made up of specialized members who are able to counsel children who have displayed fire starter actions. So last year when I put this slide up, EMT vaccinator services was in red because that was our latest and greatest. We are still providing that service to the community at this point, mostly through the Q County Health Department. And last year, or this current year's budget, we started to provide EMT COVID-19 testing services. We worked with our partner East Hill Medical to help them provide testing services to the community. So the department is made up of 76 uniformed staff members, 5 of whom are part of the SAFER grant that the department was awarded last fall. And one of them is a non-uniform member who is the department secretary. The department operates out of 2 stations. The new station is located at 31 Seminary Street. That's the brand new public safety building. And we also operate out of a Station 3 located at 296 Clark Street on the west end. Those 2 stations are important, and they're important because they're on opposite sides of the railroad tracks and they're on opposite sides of the river. So should we have a flooding incident or should we have a rail incident, we will be able to respond quickly no matter what situation we would come across. So the department has 5 fire engines. Those are the pumpers. They pump the water. It has 2 fire trucks that are the aerials. They're the trucks with the big ladders on top that are used to rescue people from windows and cut holes in roofs as needed. We have 1 heavy rescue truck, which is basically a large toolbox that carries all our specialized equipment for all our tech rescue disciplines, for our hazmat team. It carries vehicle extrication equipment. It carries vehicle stabilization and structural stabilization equipment. We have 1 technical rescue trailer, which basically carries everything the heavy rescue can't. We have a lot of disciplines. We have a lot of specialized equipment, and we need a two vehicle response, if you will, for those larger incidents. We have 1 incident command vehicle. That's the vehicle that the department chief responds in when he responds to calls. And we have 4 administration vehicles. One of them was purchased through a grant as a tow vehicle to tow our tech rescue trailers. And one of them is operated by the Fire Inspection Bureau. One of them is operated by the department training officer, and the other one I operate. Last year, we responded to over 7,800 calls for service. That is up from the previous year by approximately 500 calls. Well, here's our budget in a snapshot. So like all departments, our biggest cost is our personnel. So this year, our increase in personnel is 15.24%. Now that is all based on the fact that we have additional people with the SAFER grant that we're carrying their cost in this line. And it also talks to the collective bargaining increases. So if you take the SAFER cost out of this line, you'll see that it is a 10.9% increase. Overtime, you'll see, is greatly reduced in this column. The $315,000 is all overtime. That's overtime for training. We need overtime to send people away to train for all the special disciplines and, quite frankly, just to keep up on their firefighting skills. It also covers any contractual obligation as far as staffing goes. And it covers all emergency overtime. So anytime we have an incident whereby the duty crew, that crew that is on duty, is committed to an incident, like a structure fire, we are still obligated to provide service to the rest of the community. So we call in firefighters to staff our reserve vehicles. So you look at the current revised budget, and you know, it's inflated, and it's inflated because it is currently carrying the COVID vaccination and testing clinic overtime that we have put in for reimbursement from FEMA, and it is also carrying some overtime that represents the instructors' pay for the current fire academy that the department is putting on. Those two costs will ultimately come back to the city. Hopefully we'll get reimbursed by FEMA, and the academy costs are going to come back to us by way of reimbursement from other departments that we are currently training their recruits. So we have 7 recruits in the academy. There are a total of 16 involved. So we have 9 other recruits from other departments that needed this same service, and so we are providing that to them, and we will receive reimbursement for their students. So if you look at operating costs, that's what it takes to run the department, everything from toilet paper to fire hose. And you'll look there and you'll see that I held that line. So health benefits, again, health benefits, again, you'll see that there is an increase. And again, SAFER does play into that. So if you look, the increase is 8.75 without SAFER. So, and again, all the SAFER money will come back to us on an annual basis. So retirement benefits, they actually went down this year. So if we pull the SAFER out, we can see that the retirement benefits for the department are actually going to drop 6.68%. So if you look at the overall budget, you'll see that it is a 6.65% increase over the current budget we are in now. And if you remove the SAFER from the fire department's budget, right, that money's coming back to the city, it represents a 3.11% increase. It's just a little graph to show you just how it all plays out. So the department by design does not bring in a lot of revenue. We go to fires and car accidents and medical calls if we provide service. However, we have 2 programs in our department that do bring in some money. One of them is fire inspections. Fire department card charges $50 an inspection for the fire inspection bureau, and normally accompanied by a fire company to go through a business or a church or another occupancy that is mandated for inspection through New York State, and we charge $50 for that. The other program that brings in some revenue to the department is our vacant building registry, and it stays pretty steady. And we generate about $100,000 annually through that program. And basically what that program does is it mandates that vacant buildings be registered with the city. And it has a sliding scale, as you can see, where first year is 300, second year is 500, third year is 1,000, fourth year is 1,500, and if you're doing it for 5 years or longer, it's $2,000 a year. It is meant to encourage those property owners to invest in their property and get it off the city's vacant building registry. It also mandates that those property owners provide us the contact information we need so that we can follow up should there be any incident at those addresses. So that's the budget in a nutshell. It was a little longer than Bob's, but does anyone have any questions?
You mentioned calls for service last year were 7,800.
Correct.
How does that relate to the previous year?
It's up about 500.
Any contributing factor there that you can pinpoint?
It would seem that in general, emergency services as a whole is becoming more and more of the stopgap for the public in many ways.
Thank you.
Second, Councilor.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff, how do we get out?
Escape.
Escape. See? I put your fire out, but I'm going to struggle through this PowerPoint.
Next presentation will be the Auburn City Ambulance by Keziah Sullivan. Did I get that right?
You did, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for giving the opportunity to present the City of Auburn ambulance budget for the first time. Now, I want to start with just a brief summary description of our service. We are responding out of the former fire station at 23 Market Street. We have 5 advanced life support ambulances. We typically use up to 4 per day at this simultaneously, especially during shift changes. And having 5 allows us the ability to have one out for maintenance or repairs without impacting our service delivery. Since starting operation in November, we've responded to 2,916 total calls. About 89% of those were emergency calls dispatched by the Cuyahoga County 911 Center, and the remaining approximately 10% were interfacility transports from Auburn Community Hospital to other hospitals or to nursing homes. On average, we have an ambulance en route 1.1 minutes from time of dispatch and 3.7 minutes to the scene. Our average call duration is 113 minutes. That's from the time of dispatch to the time that the ambulance has completed all duties and is back in service. This is probably a little longer than most people would expect, but it does include our longer transports when we go to Syracuse, Rochester, or even more distant hospitals. And it also includes the longer than average wait times that we've been experiencing in hospital emergency rooms, where crews are waiting with a patient to get into a room. 97.5% of our calls were in the 13021 zip code, and 2.5% were outside of that area. This chart is just a breakdown of the time of day that we receive our calls. It's broken down into 3-hour increments. It's pretty steadily busy, but you can see that we do have a drop off, as most people would expect, between around 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., and the majority of our calls come in between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. As most people would expect, the majority of our emergency responses involve treatment and transport of a patient. But we do have other categories of calls, and this chart shows that breakdown, including calls that are canceled, patient refusals, standbys at incidents like structure fires. And the highlighted ones are the ones that we can actually bill for. So about 82% of our incidents are billable, and the remaining 18% are non-billable emergency calls. Next, I have a very brief summary of revenue. Since we have not been operating for a full year yet, it was important to look at a prior year when planning for this budget. So in 2020, when Auburn City Ambulance was operated by TLC, they reported 5,893 billable calls and had a revenue of $2.6 million. Since starting operations in November of 2021, Auburn City Ambulance has had 2,474 billable calls. So far, the billing process has been finalized for 30% of those, and we've collected a little over $500,000 from those trips. The remaining 70%, the billing is still in progress, so we will definitely have additional revenue coming in from those, but the exact amount is still unknown. Our medical billing company is Quick Med Claims, and they use software to project our performance based on our performance to date. So over the past 5 months, they've used that data to project that annually we should have 6,356 billable calls and generate $2.68 million. This is a projection, it's an estimate, but because we don't have a full year of operation, we do need to use some projections and estimates in our planning. Lastly, just an overview of our budget. So for the fiscal year starting in 2021, we had a budget of $2.4 million. We started spending money about 8 months ago and had full operating expenses about 5 months ago. So we have spent $1,037,000 over that time. This is a partial year, but we have successfully stayed within our budget. This is an overview of our proposed budget. The majority is allocated to personnel and operating costs, just as most other city departments. Our operating costs in the light blue line in the middle includes billing company fees, medical supplies, ambulance fuel, vehicle maintenance, vehicle and equipment lease repayments, station utilities such as gas and electric, money for station repairs, and typical department supplies like office supplies and cleaning supplies, for a total proposed budget of $2.6 million. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that we're averaging 583 calls a month so far. How does that compare to the prior ambulance service and their monthly call volume? Do we know that?
I don't have those numbers with me, but it's close.
Okay.
You know, there's a little bit of fluctuations from year to year. So we have records back to 2018, I think, maybe even a little farther back than that. And looking at those, some years are higher than others. I think we have a very slight increase, but until we have more time elapsed, I'm not sure that we can draw any conclusions from that.
You mentioned that I think it was 73 calls outside of Auburn. Can you just, for the public, and I guess for our education, are those mutual aid calls?
Yeah, and our electronic medical record software breaks it down pretty easily by zip code. There's other ways to look at it to try to find out exactly which ones were in the city of Auburn and which ones were outside the city of Auburn, but it's less accurate. So I'm hesitant to put that less accurate information in a presentation, but I'm confident with what the breakdown by zip code. So the responses outside the zip code are mutual aid Union Springs, Senate, Troop, Weedsport, Port Byron, Fleming, Owasco, anywhere we're called. We do participate in the Cuyahoga County mutual aid system.
But by zip code, is that accurate? Because Owasco, Aurelius, Fleming is 13021.
Yep, so those are included in the 13021
Okay.
zip code. Yep.
All right, so it's not
anything-
just Auburn, it's that zip code.
It's that zip code.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
And the last question I have, you talked about the billing and the collection of fees. What are we seeing, and maybe you don't have this information now, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. You can certainly relay it to us. What is the average time to collect on a bill? And the second part of my question is, does the billing service do the collection part of it as well if somebody isn't paying?
So the first part of the question, generally we would see a higher percentage of revenue collected within a 5-month period. But the billing company, and this is not completely unexpected, has a slower start because they were getting set up to bill for us while we were actively operating. So we are watching their performance really closely, and that's something we'll have to monitor. If they are underperforming, we certainly have the option to switch to a different billing company.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that I would be interested going forward, of us knowing, you know, what is that average time to pay, and how does that relate across the industry, you know? I think that's important to look at. And as far as the collection aspect of it, are they, if somebody isn't paying, are they handling that collection process and going after that money, or is it just, hey, they haven't paid it in 120 days, there's nothing we can do?
The city of Auburn has the option to hire a collection agency. That has not been done yet.
So what is our plan with that if we get to a point where somebody's not paying?
We're actually getting together next week to work on selecting a company to do that and
Okay.
deal with that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Cuddy.
And these claims are going to insurance companies, correct? Or Medicaid or Medicare, is that? I'm sorry, yes. Sorry, Ms. Sullivan, these claims are for insurance companies, correct? And Medicaid?
Yes, when we take a patient to the hospital, we collect information when we can about what insurance company they have, or if they don't have an insurance company. So just like if you went to the emergency room or to a doctor's office, if you have an insurance company, they bill the insurance company. If you don't have insurance, then you do get a bill directly.
And that, in the case of the fact that 13021 covers a lot of the donut towns, this service really is kind of built-in mutual aid anyway, because we're not billing, we're billing for the service, and which is mostly insurance companies and Medicaid and whatnot. So, you know, I just think that helps people understand that we're filling in for, you know, this isn't just, I should say, this is designed, and as you indicated in your presentation, to sustain itself, and that the projection that was given by our current service is in line with what your budget is, correct?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I sort of think about mutual aid calls to surrounding areas as additional customers.
Yes. And again, I think that's important for the public to understand, is that,
Yeah.
that it's the insurance that pays for the service.
Right. And as long as it's not too much of a draw on the coverage for the city,
Yeah.
it benefits the overall operation. And there's a back and forth as well. So when we're unavailable, they can come in.
There's AMR comes in to the city because they have the county contract. So the mutual aid works both ways, as you said.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a difference between what you bill and what you get?
Yes, there is. And it depends on the insurance. So Medicare and Medicaid have set reimbursement fees for certain levels of ambulance service and for the mileage. And so you can bill $1,200, but if the set reimbursement rate is $360, that's what you get. And private insurance companies also differ in the amount that they'll reimburse, and sometimes that's negotiated even right now through the city, through the comptroller's office.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keziah, do you have a rank structure within your department? You know, it's a couple of questions. Do you have a rank structure? Who is, when you're out of the building or you know, a vacation, whatever, do you have someone that you appoint to be in charge, or how does that work? The chain of command, I guess.
So currently, we're still functioning under Chief Fritz as the department head. I'm the director of operations, and then we have lead paramedic positions, which we have one per shift, and they do the first line of supervision. If they have questions, then they will put that up the chain of command to me. They are able to cover if I'm not available, but I'm always available.
In the ghost of councilors and mayors in the past, do you have a minimum staffing number, or try to meet a minimum staffing number?
It's a little different than with other departments, I guess, but the ambulance crews are two-person crews. Our model is to have 3 in service at all times and to have 3 advanced life support ambulances in service. And so to meet that model, you need 1 advanced life support provider, which is either a paramedic or an EMT critical care, and 1 EMT per ambulance. So I guess you could think of it as 6.
Chief Fritz can fill you, or Mr. Dyer can fill you in a minimum staffing, whatever we call it. So,
Yeah.
How many,
anything else, Counselor?
I'm sorry.
What's that?
How many total employees right now?
We have 21 full-time and 6 part-time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
your time. Chief Slade, that's our police department budget.
I don't know how to get it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to bear with me. Chuck, do you know that where that would be? The USB? See, you pay us to be on the street. Use it in this. All right, now I'm ready. Mayor, Council, thank you for letting me present the 2022-2023 budget to you. As you know, the Auburn Police Department, what they do on a daily basis depends on what our needs are from the public. So like Chief Fritz says, we get called for whatever, whenever, any time of the day. So we're that call if they don't know who to get a hold of somebody or get a hold of us. So currently, with the 2022-23 budget, we're looking at 68 sworn police officers. That includes our detective bureau, myself, the deputy chief. Currently, we are operating at 4 people short, which is better than what we've had in the past, but we're still can't seem to get fully staffed. over the last several years. We have 5 civilians working in the building, 1 full-time parking enforcement and 2 part-time parking enforcements, and they work different hours of the day. That way we have coverage at night, in the afternoons, downtown, wherever's needed in the city. This year we added 4 part-time special patrol officers. They're in the schools. The school district pays for them. It's actually worked out pretty good because that gives us the opportunity to have coverage in every single school building every day, which is a big thing, and the school district appreciates that. Currently, we have 13 crossing guards with 3 subs. The budget breakdown, as you can see, most of the budget, like everybody else, is covered by salary, wages, and benefits. It's 85% of our budget, over 85%, with our overtime budget at 663. That's 6% of our cost. The operating budget is $381,272. Over the past few years, what's happened there is our overtime operational has gone up because we didn't have the members because of COVID like everybody else. We had to fill shifts. We actually had a lot of officers working extra shifts daily to cover what we had lost over the years. So we're seeing a turnaround. We have 1 in the academy right now, which is great. We'd like to have 3 more with him. We're working towards that. Contractual, OT contractual, what that is we have certain obligations with other agencies and departments to provide overtime services to them. The overtime reimbursed, we do an OVW program, a domestic violence follow-up program, things like that. That money gets reimbursed to us through grants. You'll see the equipment services, 508, 940. With that being said, you know, I know we put in for vehicles every year, and the reason we do this is Sergeant Gilbert does a phenomenal job for us rotating those vehicles in and out, so we have vehicles that operate for us all the time. And when we're done with those vehicles, we're able to afford those to other city departments. As Ms. Haynes said the other day, she finally got one that she didn't have to dump a lot of money into. That's our goal. Our goal is to pass those on when we're done, still be functional for other departments to be able to use. Just some of the calls for service. We're pretty consistent. 2020, we had 32,884 calls for service. 2021, 33,750. Looking at this year, we did a printout today. We're at 7,783 calls for service through today's date. So our numbers are pretty significant with the number of people that we have. And the reason I put the number of juvenile arrests up there, went from 29 to 42, because we had to raise the age law, come into New York State, and it raised the age to 18. It used to be 16. Anybody above 16 was considered an adult. Now that's 18. So those are why our juvenile arrests and numbers have gone up. Domestic violence incidents, they pretty much stay the same. It went up 50-some calls, 60 calls, but that's typical. Sex offenses have gone up. Our detectives are being tasked with more and more sexual abuse cases, CPS calls for service. Suicide attempts and investigations, overdose and mental health. This is where our numbers get screwed a little bit because a lot of these calls will come in as an overdose or a mental or a suicide attempt, but if you look, it's over 800 calls within those 3 services, and we all know mental health is a big calls for service now amongst everywhere. Every department's seeing it. People are coming into different buildings, agitated, upset. A lot of factors come into play, so we have seen those numbers come up. One thing I want to talk about is suspicious activity investigations. I noticed today have gone up significantly. We've had an average of 1,420 per year of those. So far this year, we have handled 530 calls for suspicious activity within the city. So I'm anticipating those numbers to be very high by the end of the year. We're coming into the summer months, people are getting outside, so we're gonna see that increase. The Detective Bureau, they handled 365 new cases. They're pretty consistent, 352 the year before. The one that I want to highlight a lot here is in the search warrants. We executed 78 search warrants, and you'll see next to it says non-phones. Those are search warrants on houses, persons, and things like that. The next line is 39 phone extractions using the Cellbrite equipment we got in July. Just since July, we've had 39 of those. So to put it in perspective, what happens now is you'll take your average phone that somebody, say we have a larceny or we have, you can look at the next line, the homicide, I'll talk about that in a minute. But when we take a phone from somebody, say there's evidence on the phone, we not only have to do a search warrant for the phone, but if we want to look at whatever platform they're using, if it's Facebook or Snapchat or any of those platforms, we have to do separate search warrants for each one of those. So we can't just go into someone's phone once we get the phone and start searching through it. If we know it's on Facebook or something has to do with that, we have to do a separate search warrant for those. So for the recent homicide in March, and if we know something's happened, what we do now is preservation requests with the carriers. So we did 65 preservation requests for the homicide, which resulted in over 20 search warrants, which is continuing because when the subject comes back from South Carolina that we had the warrant for, there's going to be more evidence that needs to be gained through that. So in 11 subpoenas, and those things will keep going up. So it's not just that we can take someone's phone and start going through it. We have to follow the law and get subpoenas and search warrants for all those. Narcotics investigations, they had 118 cases with 15 arrests, 11 firearms were seized in 2021, and 14 search warrants executed. So once again, looking at today's number, the year to date, that has gone up. We've had 32 drug investigations since January of this year. So those numbers, I imagine, are going to go up also. Types of different drugs I just named, the marijuana, the fentanyl pills. That's something that we're seeing new around here. An average fentanyl pill will go for $20 to $30. A person doesn't take a full pill. They break that into quarters. If you take more than that quarter that you're supposed to, you could obviously overdose and die on those. So you got to look at that aspect of the number of pills we get off the street. It's not just one pill, it's broken into 4 different segments, so it affects many more. And I will have some more details for you end of May, I hope to, on a investigation that we did with our Narcotics Bureau. So heroin, other controlled substance, and the other thing that we are seeing here is Molly. Molly is a cheaper version of heroin, and the issue we have with these are the same thing you're going to see with the marijuana laws is it's not regulated, and it's the ones we're seeing people are creating their own. They're putting in it whatever they want to. So that becomes a problem for us, and that's what Molly is. It makes them do some crazy things with the different additives in them. Some of the major cases, like I talked about, I wanted to go over. Just since the beginning of last year, September started, we had the officer-involved shooting. I came before you and let you know that the Attorney General's office has cleared our officer on that. We had a motor vehicle accident with 2 fatalities. The organized criminal investigation, which I was talking about earlier, we'll have in more detail, hopefully by mid to end of May for you. 2 shootings in March. The homicide is separate from the 2 shootings. We had the bank robbery down on Genesee Street and another robbery on Janet Street. And I highlight those because with our shortage and with the operations and the overtime costs, that's where a lot of this comes in. We can't plan on what's going to happen. We just have to react to it in these situations, and it causes quite a bit of overtime when people have to come in, and the detectives worked around the clock on the homicide. So we're thankful for our partner agencies, the Sheriff's Department and State Police, for coming in and helping us. We know we can't do this by ourselves. Training's a big thing. Councilor Giannettino, you can attribute to this. In our training division, we've done over 22,000 hours of training. With that being said, with all the new officers that we have, they get the training in the academy, but nothing is like the street training when you come back. And then we apply our training to that. So we make them go an additional training over what everybody gets, and every officer, it doesn't matter. I take these trainings too. We always have everybody in the department take these different trainings. So we do that on a platform. One of them is Police One Academy, which is nice. We don't have to send people away to school. It's a cost savings measure for us. We do it in-house. Usually we do it at least once a month. They're hour-long courses, and you do that within your shift. Men and women don't get paid overtime to do it. They're required to do it while they're working. The Basic Police Academy, hopefully we're down to using one now. We were sending people to Mohawk up in Herkimer, which again was an additional cost for us to send somebody that far away, and the Broome Academy in Binghamton, New York. So now we're back using a local police academy. They just didn't have one year, and then they didn't have enough room for all the people that we needed at the time. And we currently have 6 more police officers that are finishing up their field training right now. They should be done this week, which will again offset that overtime that we've had. We do driving training, use of force. With the new taser and body cams that we're getting a new taser. So each member will have to go through a new set of taser training, and then all the training that we'll have to do with the body cameras when we get those. Accreditation, we haven't forgot about this. We had a mock assessment done. They came in and told us where we were deficient, what we needed to do. We're working on getting some additional cameras in the building to have 2 layers where our evidence is. Councilor Kent, who came in and walked through and saw our evidence is busting through the seams. They look at that stuff. So we have to put another camera in, which we've been working with Jesse with. The goal is to achieve it by the end of the summer of this year. We work on this almost daily with LJ Church. He tells us what we need. We try to get it done within our hours of work. The ongoing policy and procedures, every time something comes up, like the new body cameras, we had in order to get approved for the grant, we had to make sure our policy and procedure was in place, which we did. So, and the accreditation is going to hold us further accountable and be more transparent than what we are. One thing that I just want to touch base on quick is one thing that I keep my eye on is officer wellness. With all the hours that the men and women are working and all the calls of service that they're taking, we have to make sure we take care of our men and women. So we have a team together for officer wellness. We try to do more with them. We want to make sure that they know they can come to us. It's okay if they're having a bad day and talk through some stuff. What we've done now after major incidents, we do a debrief, make sure they need and get whatever it is that they need. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Chief, you mentioned that you're still down 3 officers, I think, right? You have 1 in the academy, but you're down 4 total. So you're
Down 4 total, yes.
with the one that's in the academy.
Correct.
What is the plan to fill those 4 vacancies? Is there an active list? Do you have to wait for a new test?
Unfortunately, there is no active list because we've exhausted the current list that we have. We can only give the test once a year, and we give it in September. The results won't be back till December. January, we'll give the agility. So it'll be February of next year before we get anybody off a list. What we can do is, oftentimes there's people that would like to lateral in. We have taken laterals in the past, and that's something that we have to look into and see if anybody's willing to lateral in.
I just think it's important for the public to hear that there are constraints to the hiring process. That, well, none of us want to pay the overtime, and I would guess that most of the officers on the road are probably to a point where they may not want to work the overtime. There's been so much of it that we simply can't just have another test and get another list and try to hire more police officers. So, in certain ways, our hands are tied to the civil service law. The other thing I wanted to mention, there was talk of bringing security in-house here at City Hall. I know it's not included in this budget that he just presented. If that happens, will those part-time officers, or whatever they are, whatever that looks like, will they ultimately fall under your budget?
more than likely, because they'd fall into the classification of special patrol officers is what we're discussing right now.
Okay. And how does that hiring process work?
Right now, the way it's written through civil service is anybody that is a former retired police officer with the state, with the city or county can be hired outright. If you are from the New York State Police or a peace officer, such as a prison guard, you will have to take a competitive list through civil service.
Okay.
Councilor.
All set, thank you.
Councilor.
Thank you for this presentation, Chief. I had a question about the fact that we're looking to transition to a community that will be embracing cannabis as a legal option to purchase and use and so forth. And I didn't see anything specific about that. Are you anticipating that impacting your budget? I know we've talked about how you have to bring the officers up to speed on how they would stop somebody and test them for, I don't even know what it would be called, but.
Yeah, so right now we have a DRE expert, it's a drug recognition expert. Matter of fact, he was in the other day because somebody was driving under the influence and they did not test very high on the Alka-Sensor. So we bring that DRE instructor in, and this person was on some prescription medications, and they were able to charge her. Right now, the DREs will do that. We have one, but this past year we planned ahead. We had 23 of our road people certified in A-RIDE. It's the first step of being a DRE instructor. And the nice thing about that is all that is funded by the state. So our person had to go all the way out to Arizona to do his testing, but they pay for everything, the hotel, the flight, and that's nice advantage that we have. But we have people in place that have taken that first phase to help us out when this does come into effect.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Councilor Cuddy.
I know, thank you, Mayor. I know a few years ago, there was a push for lateral transfers, and you had mentioned that earlier in your presentation. When there was the advertisements and I believe there were billboards, did we get any lateral transfers at that time?
We got about 4 lateral transfers from when we reached out and did our recruitment and advertisement for lateral transfers.
So there is a possibility to get people into the department, into APD, in lieu of not being able to administer the test. So there is a potential to get some lateral transfers.
Correct.
Okay.
And I was advised by the city manager too, who has knowledge in the civil service law, that there is times when we can petition another list because ours is exempt or done with, that we may be able to petition other agencies for that.
Great, great. Thank you, that's it.
Councilor Castro.
Condition of your building, and have you outgrown it?
Yes.
We are busting at the seams, yes. We do have some issues. There is some stuff in the works. Been working with Christina Selvik, and there's things that we have to do to give us some more room. Right now, we don't have any extra offices or space.
Is it time to look elsewhere and possibly expand, or can we make that building work? I mean, I know it's an old building and it's gotta cost a ton.
Right, I think we'll learn more as we go through the process of bringing in some architects and engineers that specialize in that. So much the way we've done in the past, if we bring in somebody for the police station, more than likely we'll focus on a firm that specializes in police departments, right? And the needs of a police department. Just like in the past when we've talked about courts, there's firms out there that specialize in court space or fire department space, so on and so forth. So we'll look at that. Of course, right at the moment, that assembly of 2 buildings is cohabitated with the ambulance right at the moment, And there's definitely space available. It's just about how we allocate that space and how we control that space. Because each side of that operation has their own needs, security needs, for instance, for like the narcotics and the medical side of it, evidence space and security for the police department. So everybody's got slightly different needs. There's quite a bit of space down there. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All set, Council. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next presentation, Corporation Counsel with our attorney. Stacy. Also, Mr. Garland.
Thank you, Mayor.
Does this?
I was looking to introduce you and then she popped up, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm actually here with Assistant Corp Counsel Nate Garland tonight. We decided we would present as a team because that's how we work. If I can get this going, there we go. Let's see. How do I do this, Chuck?
Slideshow.
Where am I going?
Slideshow.
Where?
Top.
Oh, here we go.
Then all the way to the left.
It's not.
From the beginning.
It's not getting me there. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So this is the budget for the Corporation Council. So I want to go back. Who we are. So Attorney Garland and myself are the legal attorneys for the city. We provide advice to yourselves, mayor and council. We work side by side with the city manager's office and all of the city departments, as well as the boards and commissions, to provide any and all legal needs and advice. We practice in all the New York courts and all federal courts. What we do, so within the realm of municipal law, we pretty much cover everything. I think when residents ask me what we do, I try to say that pretty much any legal topic or area you can think of within the realm of the city is handled by Attorney Garland and myself. We try to split up the areas of practice for the sake of efficiencies. I tend to lean into labor matters and contracts and real estate. Nate he has a strong background in criminal matters, so he handles a lot of zoning and planning, code enforcement, housing issues, as well as tax assessments and things of that nature. So it's a lot. On any given day, I don't think we ever really know what's gonna happen. With respect to specific services, I did include in the council packets, I don't know if you all had a chance to see, and for the public's benefit, an outline of what we did in 2021 to now. It's fairly detailed, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But it did include special topics like handling the new legislation for the cannabis law, as well as our opioid litigation, some things that rise above and beyond the normal activities. Operating budget-wise, this is a little, I went back in time on purpose because I wanted to kind of show back in 2017 was when I first started working on this department budget and where we are now. One of the goals was to bring a lot of the legal services in-house. So for the sake of saving money, so that's where we are. One of the new things that was added into our budget in 2019 was the Human Rights Commission. So that commission actually handles their own budget, but it's in our department just for the sake of including help and direction to the commission. They will be presenting to council next week, so you'll hear from them then. And that's it, short and sweet. Attorney Garland, I wanted to turn it over to him if he had anything to add.
Thank you. Only that one of the things that we've been talking about recently that doesn't necessarily show up in a budget is our relative strengths are great. It's good to have expertise in specific areas of law, but the idea of redundancy has become more and more important, I think, for every operation in City Hall and in the world, really. The last couple of years have shown us that if one person is unable to come to work, that it's important to have someone else that will step up and do that. So with that in mind, we're working together to kind of cross-pollinate our areas of expertise. That Stacy's taking a more active role in quality of life issues, code enforcement, housing, that sort of thing that I usually handle for our office, and I will be working on things that the Corporation Council usually does, labor negotiations, real estate, so that if for whatever reason one of us is unable to step up and handle what is normally our purview, the other attorney in the office will have an opportunity to do that.
I wanted to make a side note too, that it's Nate and I in the office, and then our paralegal, Rosemary Taylor, I refer to her as the boss of the office, so we wouldn't be able to do what we do without her, and she is added as one of the full-time employees, so she's really the brains behind everything. So.
Hear, hear.
I heard about other department heads, but I know when I have something for legal, I ask Rosemary first.
Yeah.
She can let you into the gate, or she doesn't.
Pretty much.
It kind of tells you where you stand right now. Questions, council? Anyone?
No.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Duggar.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. Just a real quick overview of what happens in the city manager's office. Ultimately, we hire and supervise all city personnel. I'm the one responsible for the signing on the bottom line whenever we hire, or in the unfortunate case where we terminate somebody, that's my doing. We all oversee all city operations and coordinate all of our staff and our department heads throughout the organization. We negotiate and enforce our contracts, both our internal contracts with our employees and our contracts with vendors and things like that, through very close working relationship with our Corporation Counsel's office. Likewise, with our city laws and regulations, we prepare the annual budget, or in speaking, we prepare the annual budget. I think we all know that our comptroller really has the weight of that, but we coordinate that, and we this office has that responsibility and authority to finalize that. We do our best, or I do my best, to update you on city issues, projects, and programs, and we'll continue to try to make that, improve that communications. We do our very best to resolve citizen complaints to the best of our ability, and the manager, the secretary to the city manager, or my administrative assistant, Shelley Lowe, does an amazing job of that. I actually probably don't know half of what happens and what stops at her desk that she takes care of and deals with one way or another, by redirecting to another city department to appropriately take care of an issue, or based on her experience, able to resolve those issues herself. Obviously we serve the mayor and council, we serve all the citizens and business owners of the city, and all of our city employees, and try to strike a appropriate balance between all of those things. Our operating budget is not huge, but what we did a couple of years ago is we brought
the Director of Capital Projects and Grants into the city manager's budget and out of the planning budget. We have discussed with you on several occasions recently getting some help for our Director of Capital Projects and Grants. So when you see the percentage of change, that position is included in here, and the discussion prior to this has been to either fund that at least partially through ARPA funds or portions of grants that happen to come in. So as we move ahead and over the last couple of years, especially the last few months with COVID and ARPA, federal funding and state funding, a lot of the funding that is available to us comes in the form of some sort of grant. So what we wanted to do is increase capacity, and by increasing capacity, we increase the likelihood that we will get more grants and be able to do more good things around the city, but it comes at a heavy administrative burden. And it also, to Nate's point, it makes sense for us to start training someone else to take on some of those additional responsibility and learn the network, learn the system and all that. So that's a major part of that percentage change. You'll also notice on the bottom here that in the past, over the past few years, we had a part-time safety officer for the city. When that individual left that position, we absorbed some of those duties into the newer HR position. So certain things, training related, the HR department is taking care of, and as far as the physical inspection of city facilities and buildings, the fire department, fire inspector, and code enforcement have kind of taken over those duties. I believe that's it. Questions?
Council?
Was anybody timing that? Did I beat Bob Roth here? I didn't.
He beat you.
It was pretty close.
I tried.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger.
Chuck, do you need this on something in particular to get you?
Other business from Councilor Cuddy, please.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I am looking at next week's agenda, and I'm looking at this week's agenda. Let's see here. I'm looking at next week's agenda, and I was wondering, I had mentioned in weeks past if I could have TNR, Auburn Community Cats, come in and give a short presentation. Then I figure, I talked to the representative, Claire Lovell. She put together a really short, at most 10-minute presentation. Would council be willing to have them present next week?
I just want to ask you this, a little more of a background as to what they, I have no objection to it, I'm just looking for a little more information.
So, I've been in contact with the local cat group, as you all know. And I talked a few weeks back about having them give a short presentation. And it's about the feral cat situation. And I had mentioned, during, months back that this was a big issue in the city. I just want to give some, have them give an update on what they're doing and how that might help the Auburn cat issue. And I think it may be of some help in at least what I would like to present my thoughts for the budget. Just, again, it's very nominal.
Councilor, I personally have no problem with that. I was just looking for a little better explanation.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry if I,
Okay.
yes, so, but that's what I'm asking. I know that there's an agenda posted, but my intent was to bring it up tonight anyway, and if my colleagues are okay with a short presentation.
No objections. Mr. Duggar.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Giannettino.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of next week's agenda, it looks like staff will be looking for input from us on the budget. Is that accurate?
Right, yes.
Okay. I know the state budget was passed late this year. Have we received any indication regarding items such as road funding and where they're at, where they're going to be?
I can make some assumptions based on certain items in the state budget that stayed stable, but there's new things like the Pave Your Potholes program and things like that that I do not know where that funding will be. I actually anticipated NICOM would be sending something out this week and have not seen anything, surprisingly. So that certainly will inform our budget.
Councilor, I think right now in Auburn, they have their hands full with other matters.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Point taken, Mayor. I do know that AIM funding has remained flat. You know, when the initial budget, the governor's budget came out, the fact that AIM funding was at last year's level was a win, right? Because the previous regime used to play with us every year and would propose cutting AIM funding. Then we'd have to fight to get it back in there to the previous level. It initially, to me, was a win. But, you know, looking at it logically, it really isn't a win that it remained flat. I mean, it's been, I think, 12 years, somewhere 12 years, 15 years, since we've had an increase in AIM funding. And that's our aid and incentive to municipalities. That's the unrestricted money we can use to pay the bills. It comes from our sales tax to the state. It comes from our income tax to the state. It is unconscionable, and let me preface this by saying I've sent this message to the governor's office on my own, and I got no response, so I'm going to say it publicly. It is unconscionable to me in a year where we hear about all these windfalls of revenue coming to the state of New York, where we have almost double-digit inflation, where we have services we have to provide to the people of this city. We just saw that fire calls have gone up, police calls have gone up. In those police calls, we're talking about suicides, things that matter to this community. It's unconscionable to me that that money remains flat when the state of New York can give $600 million to two billionaires who live in the state of Florida so they can build a stadium in Buffalo, when the state of New York can give $20 million to Syracuse University for dome renovations when they have $2 billion in an endowment. I don't know if anybody from the governor's office is listening. I don't know if anybody from the paper is listening. The paper will criticize us on our budget process, but they don't take these things into consideration. We are providing basic services that this city and the people who live here need on a daily basis, and we're getting no help. We're able to do it with minimal increases. We're able to do it and see that our fiscal stress has improved. So we're doing everything that we're supposed to do. Albany is failing us. The governor's failing us. The legislature is failing us. And it is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. $600 million for a football stadium. We have not seen an increase in 15 years. I know it's not going to change anything. It helps me and it helps my blood pressure to get off my chest. So that's why I did it. I hope to God somebody is listening, because it is unconscionable to me. And with that, I'll stop talking.
Very well said, Councilor. I would ask if you would sit down with our clerk and draft a letter. And I would hope that all the members of council, I have no problem signing it, but I would hope all the members of council would be willing to sign it and send it directly to Auburn. We do have a few connections there, and we'll do our best. But
I'd be happy to do that, Mayor.
very well said.
Thank you.
Very well. Not riling him up again.
Yeah.
Good man, Councilor. Anyone else? Anything else? Councilor?
You did great.
Thanks.
Nothing else? It's like we're missing something. Mr. Decker, do you have a request for executive session?
I do not, Mayor.
Somebody quick, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, Councilor Giannettino, second by Councilor Cuddy. Before we do, I do want to thank the department head. Being a past department head, it seems like every year was a different type of scenario that you would go through. So hopefully myself and council have been a little more open, a little more more generous than in times past. The best part about the budget being put to bed, so is the day after you start working on the next next budget. But thank you, it was very professional, and it was very impressive, so thank you to our department. So thank you yourself, our attorney, so thank you.
Motion to adjourn at 6:35 PM. Councilor Kent?
Yes.
Councilor Giannettino?
Aye.
Councilor Cuddy?
Yes.
Councilor Locastro?
Yes.
Mayor Quill.
Aye, we're adjourned.
That was excellent. Somehow. I'm late. Very first thing, here's a thing. They brought it yesterday for distribution. Welcome to Auburn.